Thank you so much for tuning into the Woman to Woman podcast, a conversation for women like you, smart, successful, curious, and interested in being your best self. Join both Sarah and I as we discuss topics that women our age are actually interested in, with both of us being candid and often having differing views.
As coaches, we sprinkle in advice and tips, along with humor and vulnerability. We hope you feel like a fly on the wall, with two friends. Let's entertain and inform you, and welcome you into our friendship.
We appreciate you pressing play and spending some time with us, wherever you are in the world.
Let the magic happen. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Angela, and good morning, Josephine. For the very first time, we are having our beautiful guest, Josephine, and we are going to just go on the conversation exactly the way that we used to do. And it's just now our turn to introduce you to very amazing women around the world that manage to get on live, and having more adventure. So we just want to share that stories because Angela's and my stories are not always, representing the majority of your lives. So we just want to bring on, other women, so maybe you can relate with them too. Good morning, Josephine, and welcome into our podcast. We're so happy to have you here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Good morning, Angela. Good morning, Sarah. And Sarah, I love the way you say my name. So I love I think a name like Josephine needs to be said with a French accent. So thank you.
Okay, I can say it more if you want to.
Great.
Everything that Sarah says is so much more beautiful than me. So Josephine, would you like to introduce yourself, what you do, and really how you got to where you are in life? We're really interested to share that.
Okay. So I'm Josephine Palermo. I have a background in organizational psychology. I have a PhD in organizational psychology, and I've had quite a varied career where I started working as a researcher in social sciences and really quality assurance in higher education. So I worked for about 10 years globally in higher education quality, and I worked at a national level. I lived in the Gulf for a year, setting up a national quality assurance system for higher education there, and worked in Australia at the national level. And then I had a bit of a stint in corporate Australia. I worked for a multinational organisation, working and leading a team in strategic change. And I did that for about 8 years, and that was a wonderful experience. I was responsible for 35,000 people. I was assisting the organisation to shift their culture to being a more customer-centric organisation, and that was wonderful. So I did that till about 2019, and then the organisation was making some changes, and I thought it's time for me to go. And I'd always really had a passion for really being entrepreneurial. And in fact, while I was still working full-time in a senior management role, I started two businesses. And so by the time I left that organisation, I was really busy already on that entrepreneurial path, and I thought it's time for me to go. I call it going full entrepreneurial. I really just wanted to create a life for myself where I'm able to create the things I want to create, do it in my way. It's always been important over my career that I do things in my own way, but I've always had a sensibility about, what organizations need, what teams need, what groups need. And so, but being able to really create something from scratch in the way that I envisage an organization should be was something that I was really wanting to have a go at. So I basically developed two businesses there, left, started working, and I was self-employed, a full-time self-employed person, created another business, which was the consulting business. And so now I run three businesses. And so I work hard. Well, I work smart, and what I do is I partner with amazing people, and that it really enables that hive of activity. And while the businesses kind of appear to be a bit disparate, there is a connecting flow through them, and so all the businesses are about creating an impact in people's lives, creating connection, and really making the world of work and play a better space. So my three businesses, the consulting business is called Geared for Growth, and I specialize in creating better teams and cultures for organizations. And then the other business is Higher Spaces, and that's a co-working space where we have this amazing space by the river, and we created this incredible environment to work in. And then the third business is Melbourne Belly Dance, and that's an entertainment agency and a dance school where we specialise in Middle Eastern dance and culture. So that's it. That's probably enough.
That's enough. And what I wanted to ask you was, you said they are a little bit disparate, but there is, a theme running through it. And what I know from having spoken to you before is I think that came from you following your passion rather than making a strategic plan, although you've obviously got strategy in your past. But I'd really love you to talk to us a little bit about, obviously you're highly successful, and how did you come to that place? And the other question, the second one will be, have you always followed your passion, or is that something that you learnt to do or chose to do?
I think I've always followed the things I'm interested in, and I've always been interested in lots of things. So for me, it was always, the lesson was, what do I focus on? But I think even from sort of a child, I was always interested in dance. I was very interested in people and sort of watching people and understanding how people make sense of the world. And I was always really interested in groups. And the reason I was interested in groups is because I had this real sense that I wanted to belong to a group. And as a child, I was actually I experienced a lot of loneliness as a child. I was quite an extroverted child, but the problem was that I couldn't sometimes connect with the people around me in the schoolyard, for example. And so out of that, I just had this sense of belonging. So for me, it was about, how do I bring the things that I am interested in, the things that I love doing, how do I just do more of them? And so, in my career, I followed a passion in psychology. I knew that I wanted to study psychology, and when I do something that I'm really interested in, I always have this drive to do it at an excellent level. I'm quite competitive with myself in a way when it comes to that. So if I'm interested in it, I want to do it to the highest level. And so for psychology, it's quite you study for a long time to get a degree in psychology, to be a registered psychologist. I ended up doing, all of my undergraduate training, my postgraduate training. I ended up it took me 10 years to get my PhD because I was working at the same time that I was studying. So I did the last part of it part-time. So I was very driven, but because it was something I was very interested in, it kept my attention. And I think that's part of the thing that, often I meet people and they are looking for that sense of purpose, or they're looking for that meaning in their life. And sometimes you find it, but sometimes you don't, because there are maybe, people find it difficult sometimes to really focus on the things that they're interested in, or they're told earlier on that they shouldn't be interested in that. For example, that will never make you money, or, they're following, they've got some sort of preconceived idea of what success looks like. And I think that's, for me anyway, it was never going to create a life of happiness for me. And that's the other thing. I very early on, I knew I wanted to have a life that made me happy. And I don't know where that comes from, but
that's really brave. Like in this day and age, that people think bravery is, like killing a lion or whatever, but actually chasing a life of happiness, that is brave. Do you know what I mean? And,
yes, yeah.
And that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it was because I saw, particularly so I come from an Italian background, and a lot of the women in my culture I could see were visibly not living their best lives or not living happy lives. And I think that's mainly because of the sort of, misogyny in Italian culture, and the real kind of, there's a real sense of oppression of women in traditional Italian culture. I'm not talking about modern Italy, but my parents came from southern Italy, so that the traditional values were very much favoring men and not women. And so I think for me, I just, as a very young girl, I thought, I don't want that life. I want a life that's more about me and my interests and the things I love to do and the things that make me happy.
Can I ask about your parents? Because having the desire of living the big life, I can relate to that definitely. But for me, I wanted definitely to be pleasing my parents, because my mom did something amazing for me at the age of 16 that I could not forget and I will never forget, and I'm here for her, and I decided to give away some part of my freedom to please her. So the thing is that I believe that in the Italian environment as well, you're conditioned to be, to be the good girl and to follow the career that, that's going to make you probably rich, because this is all this generation of parents wants for the kids, right? So tell me, how did you came out of this, maybe your environment was not that,
No,
restricted. I
no,
don't know. Tell us.
I can definitely relate to what you're saying, Sarah. And I think for me, I definitely had that expectation of being the good girl. I had that stereotype. I had those expectations, but there was also something else. So, and for me, I balanced that. So, I chose. I still went to university. I still studied, and I really created. A lot of income at the same time as studying. So I always had to do that. I always had to work to pay for study. And so in a way, my path was not in some ways that non-traditional. But at the same time, I did choose a non-traditional path in um, I started belly dancing when I was 22, and that was very non-traditional. I hid that from my family for a long time. Apart from my mother, see, I had mothers are interesting the way they influence you. My mother is more non-traditional than other Italian mothers in the way that she thinks. She's much more open, she's broad-minded. I think in a different set of circumstances, she would have been a different kind of woman. But even in the circumstances she was given, she was very entrepreneurial. She started many businesses. She was very successful, even though she was a single mum by the end of it. So I think that I did still have those influences, and even today, the lessons that I've learnt and had to overcome are really those lessons around not needing to please people, not kind of compromising too much of the things that I want for others. So that still does play a role, and it's something I manage. But I think I was there was something else I saw. There was some other
From your
vision that I
mom?
saw from my mother, but I think also just it was uh, from me. I think there was something that I was quite, there's this independence around the way that I was, because my sisters haven't necessarily gone down the same path. So,
Okay. I was going to say, because, I would have grown up at a similar time of you. And in the circles that I was in, which was in Melbourne, I'm assuming the same with you, I don't know any entrepreneurial mums. And actually, in my own journey of starting my own business, and I've had businesses with partners in the past and stuff, I actually had to expand my mind and my horizons very deliberately because I didn't see that.
mm.
I didn't see in my own family anywhere.
But can I ask you, you would have known women who were doing party plans, selling Mary Kay, doing some of the
Ah,
pyramid selling, they would have been selling homewares in your home and lingerie parties. So that's what I mean by entrepreneur. It's still very entrepreneurial. So my mother was an Italian migrant, English was her second language, and she ended up selling Mary Kay. She was selling homewares. She ended up being the best salesperson in the state. They gave her a car. She would never have dreamed of those things, but it's that. it's that. So when I say she ran businesses, it was more that she was doing that because that was the only thing open to her within her set of constraints.
You know what, Josephine? That's just a light bulb moment for me because I actually never thought of that as
Yeah,
starting businesses and
of
being
course.
entrepreneurial. I absolutely grew up
Yeah.
around that.
Yeah, we have to give respect to those Tupperware sellers too.
Like,
Tupperware is the other one. Respect to them because that's slogging it out, that's doing the sales, that's executing on the closing and delivery. It's kind of making sure you've got the supply to people who ordered and, all of that, maintaining repeat customers, getting referrals from customers, all done in a non-digital world. So kudos to them.
wow, I am mind blown. And now I actually like I'm gonna go and journal on that. I'm telling you, that has blown my mind. And that happens very rarely. Wow. That's a perspective change. Wow.
Hmm.
Okay. Did
Yeah,
you
because I
have any
think so.
Sarah? Did you have any does that resonate with you at all? Like
I do. I do resonate with that, and I knew that they were sailor. And when you were talking about that, I was just like, that's probably what I should have done, like to put myself out there and teach me how to sell, because this is the hard way to learn how to sell, because damn, selling is just not my, I
Oh
don't
yeah.
like it. And then people are looking at me and say, you should like it. This is part of who you are. This is part of your branding. This is part of, and I'm like, yeah, yeah. And then now when you say that, I'm just like, I should have done that. I just should
Yeah.
have signed up as a. And you know what? There is one thing here. We call it iHerbs. It's a brand, for doing milk, not milkshake, but shakes. Putting shakes with natural herbs and stuff like that. And my friend
Yeah.
is affiliate to that. And I probably should go and just do it my way, learn what they're doing,
Yeah.
and then just do it, and just to
yeah.
train myself as this, because it's an
Exactly.
easy way. I mean, it's not an easy way in the sense of easy, but you have the product, you have the infrastructure. The only thing that you need to work on is your speech, and then of course getting to know people. And that would be also for me a blessing, because I love meeting new people. So it's just like, if I have something else, then just come over. But I'm quite a full-handed as well right now. But yes, I mean, it's definitely
Yeah.
a good stuff. So tell us about you. How did you came out of this environment of watching your mom, doing that? And did you do it with her as well? Did you?
No, no. So
Okay.
I was too young. So this was when I was because my mother and dad separated when I was 13, and this is when she sort of started to do all this work. So no, I didn't. I started to work when I was 14 though, and my first job was at McDonald's. So I worked there for 4 years. It was a long time, when you're just a teenager. But again, uh, that organization has an incredible training system. So I was trained in customer service there, and there's a discipline around procedures and processes and things like that, and also the way in which the work is functionally organized. So there's a and I had a great time at McDonald's because of the friendships that I made as well. And so in a way, I was working from a young age. I enjoyed working. It was something that um, I just loved that sense of achievement and competency, and I was able to do both, which isn't for everyone. Some students really need to focus on studies and things like that, but for me, I could do both. So I was lucky enough in that way. And so after university. After my course, after my postgraduate education, I embarked on a PhD, and I did that full time for a little while and worked as a researcher in the Department of Psychology in the university that I was in. And then I soon got a job um, helping the university administration develop a business model, because that was, in a way, I was around at the right opportunity. That was the time where universities were in Australia anyway were starting to face more regulation and monitoring from the government. So they had to be more disciplined in the way that they had feedback systems and evaluated what they were doing. So I was very young, but put into these very senior positions, working with very senior leaders. because I had the skills, I had the kind of evaluation and research skills, and I could apply them to a business sense. And I still do that today. Even in my consulting business, what I love to do is apply that evidence base and research to sort of what I'm doing. So, and really, in some ways, I had never really planned my career above and beyond being a teacher or a lecturer. I always wanted to be a lecturer at a university and then be a professor. I did get that academic job. I was a lecturer at Victoria University for 7 years, teaching into the Masters of Organisational Psychology. I did that and I loved that job. But what I found was that I couldn't progress up like I wanted to. I couldn't get that professorship because my interests were too broad, and I was also much more interested in applying some of that research in the real world. And at that time, universities didn't quite have the right reward systems in place. So I left. And so, really that was it. I'd achieved kind of my plan almost, but now what? I was going to be a professor. That's not going to work out. I was a lecturer. I enjoyed that. Didn't get to the heights of that I wanted. What else? So I was looking around, and a great job came up at Telstra, and that's where I was for another 8 years, and that was in driving strategic change, and we did some amazing work there. So in a way, my plan had kind of gone into a bit of a U-turn, but again, I was following the things that I'm passionate about in terms of organizational culture and changing and having. I always wanted to have an impact on large systems, on a large group of people. So here I was at Telstra, 35,000 employees. That's as big as I ever got. And so it was such a challenge. And my part of the business, Telstra operations that I worked in, had 14,000. So I was responsible for 14,000 staff members. So it was fabulous work. I loved it. And what I do is I get an opportunity and then I go into it 150%.
Can I ask a question? Did you ever have imposter syndrome around that as a woman in a multinational, company, Telstra? I know the culture there. Did you ever have that?
Of course. I did experience that, and I often got feedback about my leadership style because I was always leading teams. I got feedback that about all my weaknesses, sort of. So I have a leadership philosophy about developing people and really leading from behind and bringing the people up who are underneath me. And at the time, I had a manager who kept saying to me, "You need to be more in the detail. You can't leave it up to your staff. You need to be, you're too emotional. You need to be focused on one thing. We don't know what your brand is." And so, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
And so I took on that feedback because I always think, why are people giving me that feedback? Even if it's feedback I don't agree with, I'll always have a look at it because it's a gift. Someone gives you feedback, even if it's really hard to take, it's a gift. So look at it. But then I just, in some ways, I had a very clear sense of my own leadership style. So yes, I did sometimes feel that, but I have this thing about, it's like the Nike symbol, just do it. And if you talk to people who I've managed in my team, they'll tell you how often I would just say, just do it. And my other phrase is, it's done. So we know when you've got a massive week coming up and you're thinking about it, or even if you've got a big project, you think, how am I going to do this? So rather than getting into this, I'm not worthy, I can't do this, I just go into the future and look at it, completed, it's done. And I learned
that's a little bit like athlete's visualization.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's already done. And once you see it's done, then all you need to do is take one step in front of the other. That's all you need to do. Get up in the morning. 80% of the work is just getting there. The rest takes care of itself. So there's things that I've learned along the way to really knock that voice in my head who tells me I'm not good enough, I'm not, that person's better than me. And what I've also done is I and I've done this all my life, I've limited my reference points. Often people compare themselves to others and then it diminishes their confidence. I've limited my reference points. So I maybe look at some people who inspire me, but I don't do it for too long. And then I go back into, well, what do I need to do? What's right for me? Because I think that when we have too many reference points, and I think social media does this to us a lot, gives us too many reference points. Suddenly you're not able to live up to any of those and you're stuck. So there are some things that I've learned along the way, but I think being a leader for me was something I always wanted to be, and I'm good at it. But what I do is I deliberately for me, I visualize it. I put on those leadership shoes. I actually put those shoes on. They're like, Dorothy's red slippers. And then from that position, I then say, well, okay, what is my purpose here? What's the impact that I want to make? And I go from there, and then the rest kind of follows.
They are some brilliant takeaways that we'll put that in the show notes. Like, honestly, just brilliant.
It's just amazing, Josephine, because I can relate this time of that conversation to me, because people know that I'm also working in a corporate, and I am also a senior leader, in the corporate, and the thing is that I am leading the same way as you do. Even though I did not receive the same feedback as you, I feel that people were much happier. My bosses were okay with my management style, and my team as well were okay. It was really, I loved it, the way that you said it. You describe it, the way that being behind and let them, because they need to learn, they need to be exposed, and that's definitely the way that I am doing. I'm doing this as well, and I'm quite knowledgeable about what I'm doing. It's not because they do. And the thing is that it made me realize that, when you talk to us about the visualization, about it's done, the thing is that I realized during this conversation that I never doubt that we would not go through it. It was completely unconscious that I never doubt that it's going to be done. Yes. When we have huge period, I'm working in finance, so finance is like the first week of the month, and then we also have all the budgeting period, which is quite intense wherever you are, and it's always a challenge, always, depending on when they run it or how they run it. It's always a challenge, but I've never doubted about myself nor my team to do the work. It's just brilliant, because I have doubts since I became an entrepreneur. I'm still working because this is a side hustle. I have so many doubts, and I could not duplicate what I was doing in a corporate environment into the entrepreneurship, because to me I've been told that it's two different worlds. But it's not, actually. You just made me realize that it's not. And what I've been successful in my corporate environment, it's because I never doubt. I just did it the way I did. Yeah. I knew my stuff, and I just, supported, with the right team as well. And then I just go for it. Never in a second doubt about it. Well, in my entrepreneur journey, it's just like full of doubt, So, and I did not know how to link both. So I think it's going to be a good insight. Thank you for that. Really, I love that.
Yeah, because I think, we're sort of told that entrepreneurship is tough and hard. And I think, to your point, Angela, you don't see a lot of women doing it. So you don't have the kind of role models, But now we have the Tupperware women, so we're good, we've got that. So you don't have that, and so you do, and you forget, don't you, Sarah, that hey, I have actually managed complex tasks, complex programs with many people involved in my corporate life. I can do this. This is a piece of cake. And even if it's not a piece of cake, it's new complexity, I know how to tackle it. I've tackled complexity before. I've tackled ambiguity before. I've tackled, short deadlines before. I've tackled meeting expectations of customers, stakeholders, or whatever they are. So you can apply it.
I want to scream yes, because it's exactly that. You're so right. I did. I did that. Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, let's move on with okay. So how did you come out of, because recently, I remember from our conversation, you were having this passion about dancing, but dancing was
Yes,
not really welcome
yes.
in your life environment. I would say in your
Yes,
childhood environment.
exactly. Exactly. So I've always loved dancing. My mother tells this story. I kind of don't have this memory, but my mother says when I was 4 years old, I begged her to take me to dance classes. I wanted to, go to ballet classes, but my father said no, and his response was, no daughter of mine is going to perform on a stage like a gypsy. So, he had very adamant ideas about women and dance. And so I never went to dance school as a child, as a teenager. I was actually quite a chubby child and a chubby teenager still, but kept dancing. I used to do all the high kicks in front of the television to, all those shows that used to be on television. And fast forward, when I was in my 20s, my early 20s, I met a woman in my workplace actually, and she was a belly dancer. And so I went to a class and really had a knack for it. It was just resonated with me, and I picked it up very quickly. And within a year, I was dancing in restaurants. So it was a very quick transformation. It wasn't something I'd planned to do. And I remember the first time I got cash in my hand to dance in a restaurant, and I could not believe it. It's one of those things where you kind of go, you want to laugh because someone's just given you money you would have done it for free. Like that's how much you love it. So anyway, but I'd actually never thought that I would be a professional dancer. I was a professional dancer for about 6 years full time while I was doing my PhD as well as doing research work. So I put myself through university as a dancer. And then I continued to dance and teach workshops. I've gone all over the world to learn from other people because some Middle Eastern dance, particularly because it's so involved in the culture, there's so much to learn, and you never stop learning. And then in 2017, I bought a business. Someone was already had already established a business called Melbourne Ballet Dance, and they'd established it as an agency, and I bought her business. So we negotiated that. I did my due diligence. It was a lovely, short entree, a quick entree into doing that. And I bought the business, and then from there have developed it into a larger business where I have still do. I'm still at an agency, but I have the dance school as well. And and part of that is actually going to morph into running retreats, and we're doing monthly events as well, because because what I know from my experience as well as teaching others is that there's this inner kind of evolution that happens when women and men too, but mostly women start to dance, because it's a inner expression that then helps them express in other ways. So there's lovely work there. There's a, in that. So that has actually been my dance journey. And one of the things that I think happened as part of that, because when you're well, maybe you don't. When you're a professional dancer, you're often out on the weekends dancing, so you don't go to dinner parties. You might not, turn up to friends' birthdays. There's something you miss. And what you're definitely not doing is leading a traditional life where you're at home um, a lot with, say, with the family. And so I never was kind of, because of that very exciting life, I knew it was part of my plan to always have children, and I knew I wanted to have children, and particularly, I thought it was definitely going to happen. But as part of that, I left it a little late. I started to think about having children when I was about 38, and I was actually married at the time. So I was thinking about having children, and we tried to have children, and I went through some rounds of IVF, um, which um, which actually, my first round of IVF was successful, but unfortunately I had a miscarriage, and so that was unsuccessful in terms of you know uh, having a baby. And I just went through another 2 rounds, and then I got to a point where I really had to ask myself, why am I doing this? What is this about? And why am I, trying to fulfill this motherhood role? because the doctor was saying by then it's not likely that you're going to be successful in other rounds of IVF. So then I thought, will I adopt? Do I, how badly is this part of my plan or part of my life story to be that mother to a biological child or a child that I adopt? And I really had to look hard, and there was a lot of grief there. I actually had to let go of that grief because that expectation of being a woman as a mother was there from, ever since I can remember. And I had to let that go because I discovered that actually it probably wasn't going to happen to me. And that was okay because I had other things that I could do. I could create in other ways. Because I think for me, what it bogged down to for me, because I think it's always a personal thing for everyone, but for me, having a child was about leaving a legacy and really giving to the next generation. And then I thought, well, how else can I do that? And so who else can I develop in that way? Does it have to be my child? Does it have to be in that family unit? Could I do it in other ways? And that's kind of where I got to.
That's so inspiring for someone who's maybe facing that, because having a child is, my mum told me this, and I don't want to go off topic, but and I'm kind of actually experiencing it because my child just turned 12. But when I had a little baby, she said to me, this is just an experience of letting that child go and
Right.
develop. And a lot of people have the child for themselves, like,
Yes,
yay,
yeah.
new toy, yay, new identity, yay, don't need to concentrate on myself. But actually, having a child is a huge responsibility to put out like a good product to the world. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I'm
that's
actually
right.
deadly serious about that. If you have it and you try to constrain them and they're all for you, or you have it just because you're meant to and you don't care about it, and then perhaps you don't have that relationship later on, like, you can actually birth
Yeah,
many things into the world.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
really interesting.
And so I was kind of looking at, what am I grateful for? And in fact, I was actually very grateful for having had that experience of being pregnant, even if it was for, a very short time in that first trimester, because that experience taught me a lot, taught me a lot of, had taught me a lot of what it feels like to kind of have that real the start of something, the start of that growth. And then I went through the miscarriage, and in a way, now I look back on it, I'm very grateful for that. I have a lot more empathy and compassion for women who have experienced that, because we often talk, well, actually we don't talk about miscarriage. We just say, oh well, someone had a miscarriage. It's like it's eating a loaf of a slice of bread, and it's definitely not. I think we have to talk more about the experience of miscarriage. I think it's profound experience. And then I was then really grateful for, in some ways, the other children in my life. So my friends' children, my sister's children. I was very grateful and I thought, well, how can I contribute to their lives? And then the other thing I was grateful for was, in some ways, not having children frees me up to do some other kind of creation. And then I was very grateful for that. So I've always wanted to write a book, and now I'm in the process of doing that. I wrote a PhD, which is kind of like a book that no one reads. So, that's doesn't kind of count. So now I'm in the process of writing a book. But, I think creating the businesses was part of that too, was part of that, really creating something from nothing. And when I look at particularly the co-working space, so the co-working space was a very physical, tangible experience of creating a product from nothing, because we leased the space, we gutted the space, we designed the space to be very conducive to well-being and calmness and a sense of creativity and collaboration. And so that was actually about really tangibly creating a product. When I do my other consulting business, I do create product, but it's more in terms of services. So sometimes it's not as tangible. But the co-working space in particular, I can look at that when I go into the space and I look around and I say, this space is here because I created it. It was something that formed, with my business partner. It was something that formed in our minds. We put it down on paper in a 2D, two-dimensional, piece of plan, plan, an architectural plan, and then created a 3-dimensional reality. And so that is like, wow. So how great, I'm very grateful to have had the space to do that. And I think if I'd been successful in that pregnancy or one of those pregnancies, my life would have just gone another way. And I'm sure that it would have been amazing and incredible and as exciting, but different, right? So it's just about being in the moment and thinking, well, I couldn't do that. So now what can I do?
That's it.
Yeah, I'm a mom of 3, and they are
Oh, wow.
young. Yes, and I was not expecting when I was all right around my 20s. I didn't want a child. I didn't want to be a mom. I was raised to be a mom.
Yes.
But I wanted to fight back this, image, and I didn't want to fit in. Seriously, I didn't want to fit in, and the thing is that things change. I met the man, and I discovered that I was meant to be mom. I'm the opposite of you, actually, in terms of fertility. I really need to take care to protect myself, otherwise I can get pregnant every month. So I really need to be careful with that. But the thing is that the moment that I became a mom, I completely transformed. Seriously, I transformed, because all the rebellious period of my life where I thought I didn't want to become a mom, then I became a mom, and so I decided I'm gonna define what mom is for me, and then I did that. But it's true that sometimes, I'm not sure if Angela this happened to you, but I have lots of friends with no kids, either by choice or by fate, and sometimes I see them, I see their freedom, and I'm like, this freedom, how can I relate to that freedom but still being a mom? It's my challenge every day, because I want to believe that being a mom should not stop you for creating other stuff. Of course your thought process is completely different, but when I look at them, it's like, okay, they can literally birth everything because they have the time. They can travel all around the world, just buy a flight ticket and then just go there and have, amazing time, and that adventurous time that I used to have in my 20s, which I don't have anymore now because I have different adventure, I would say. But, I just cannot just buy a flight ticket because, I need to respect the school. I also need to respect my finances, because flying alone or at with two, is different than flying at 5, So the thing is that, the main questions that I'm asking myself is just like, being a mom should not stop me by living that freedom life, and I know that some of my choices can be looked at from other moms like, well, you're not really there for your child, which is not fully true because they're not here with me in the house. So they don't know the quality of time that I'm having with them. But anyway, this is definitely a question, that keeps popping in my mind, like, okay, when I see other people creating and doing stuff freely, what can I do to live that kind of freedom but still being a mom? That's definitely the question.
And Sarah, maybe it's not a freedom question. I know you're kind of framing it as freedom.
Okay.
But even me, I don't have children, but every day I make decisions about how to balance all the competing demands, right? And so if I want to do some really creative work, I have to carve out time for that. And so part of that is just saying no to some things. And I think whether you're a mum or you have other family commitments, it's always that, isn't it? You have to say yes to those things, but you also want to say yes to other things. So it's actually about creating space and kind of being kind to yourself around, well, you can't do everything at once. You kind of so I actually create and carve out space, because I know that I don't want to be, when I'm doing something, I want to be absolutely present. So I don't want to be thinking about 10 different things. So, for example, if I need to um, spend some time with my nephew, I want to be able to just really be present when I'm there, and even if that's a short amount of time, because if I didn't have all this other stuff going on, I'd be able to spend more time with him. And so I feel sometimes, some regret that I can't spend a lot more time with him. So then I look at my calendar. I need to carve out more time. Where am I going to carve out that focus time, and then make that really work? Like, make that, because I remember as a child too. I don't remember as a child every single moment of the day. I remember those amazing moments when someone took me to Disney on Ice, or when I had that laughed that when I had a laugh with my mother, or when we were sewing on plastic toys. I used to have a plastic sewing machine, when my sister and I were sewing our Barbie dolls on our plastic sewing machines, and my mum came and joined us. It's those moments that I remember as a child. And I'm sure, the things we feel guilty about are those everyday things that sometimes go into the ether, and they're out of the memory. And so what I'm trying to do is, kind of, it's always a challenge, it's always a balance. So I don't feel like I'm completely free either. What I'm doing though is following the things that I really want to kind of create an impact in. And so I do say no to a lot of things, and then it's gone. The things I say no to, I don't feel guilty about. I didn't remember my friend's birthday. That's okay. I don't feel guilty about that. That's not that. I don't have that in my plan, in my life, that I remember everybody's birthday. That doesn't make me a bad friend. It just means that out of the balance, I'm not focusing on that. I'm not carving out time to do that. So it's a compromise. It's a balance. It's always a balance. But what I will do is, when I am with that person, when I spend time with that person, they're going to get me very present and 150% there.
Yeah.
It's about quality over quantity.
Yes.
But what I will chip in, Sarah, because I can really relate to you, and I kind of agree with Josephine, is it may not be a freedom issue, because there are stages in life, and you're in one of the less free stages with 3 young children, you know what I mean? And it will come so quickly that you're free and going, what do I do now? But so it's not a freedom issue, it's an identity issue. You want to hold on to your identity, and motherhood can absolutely steal your identity. And It's also a great excuse to give it up. So don't look at it as freedom. Look at it as you want to keep the Sarah that you were before. And that is about identity. And you don't need a huge amount of time for that. You just need that desire and the consistency to keep in touch with who Sarah really is, so that once the kids fly the coop, you're still Sarah.
So let's be me.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love the feedback. I love it. All right.
What a beautiful conversation, guys. It's kind of gone all over the place. So.
Yeah, no, that's okay. It hasn't made a lot of sense. So we really want to thank you for your time, Josephine. This was better than I could have expected. And there is so much for our listeners to take away from this, so much more than I ever expected. I'm really, really, really grateful for your time and your knowledge and your self-knowledge and your courage to how you know yourself has actually really blown my mind. I'm incredibly impressed. And I got a lot out of that. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Angela. And it's just been such a pleasure to meet you and Sarah. And I'm really glad to have been here, and looking forward to the next conversation. So thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, thank you very much. I also have to say that there is a lot of things that I will take away from that conversation too. Thank you very much. Thank you also for making the choice of joining us on that podcast. I think we really appreciate that. So thank you very much for your time and all what we say during that podcast. Thank you so much. Have a good day, all, and I hope you really enjoyed that podcast.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it, and every time you listen, we truly appreciate it. And if you would like to follow me or learn more about my work or get in contact with me, please go to my website, which is angelajanecoaching.com.
And if you want to know more about my work, you can go on sarahmeng.com. All the details are going to be listed in a comment below. You can also follow us on social media, Instagram or Facebook, where we are sharing our daily tips.
Bye.
Hope to see you soon.